Let's dive right into a seriously fascinating and honestly incredibly urgent topic for this explainer, the generational wealth paradox. Our core mystery today is why so many wealthy families end up losing absolutely everything they built, and, more importantly, how we can actually prevent that from happening. We're going to unpack a framework today that literally flips standard wealth management completely on its head.
To really grasp the scale of this problem, think about this number for a second: 70%. A staggering 70% of wealthy families lose their entire fortune by just the second generation. I mean, that is incredibly fast. You spend an entire lifetime, blood, sweat, and tears building a legacy, and the data shows it's highly likely to vanish almost immediately after it's handed down. Crazy, right? But wait, it actually gets worse.
You hit the third generation, and that wealth destruction statistic skyrockets to 90%. Literally almost everyone. By the time the grandkids are running the show, 9 out of 10 family fortunes are completely wiped out. And this brilliantly illustrates our core issue today. The way we traditionally prepare the next generation to handle money, it's fundamentally broken. Section 1. The generational wealth trap, and exactly why standard tools fail.
To ground this, let's look at tech investor Christopher Nelson. Living in Austin's super wealthy Silicon Hills, he looked around and realized this massive risk was staring his family right in the face. When we try to teach our kids about money, what do? We usually reach for the standard tools, investment apps, allowance spreadsheets, maybe piggy banks. But Nelson realized these totally backfire. Why? Because they're really just teaching kids that money is only about stacking up more cash. The end result isn't a generation of responsible stewards. Instead, you get a generation of entitled consumers who just want to either hoard it or spend it.
Section 2. The Radical Vacation Swap, Breaking the Cycle of Entitlement.
So to break this vicious cycle, Nelson knew he needed a massive paradigm shift. He took the expected, the classic family trip to Disneyland, and completely scrapped it. Instead, he made the radical choice to drop 15 grand to take his 3 young boys on a totally immersive service trip to Uganda. He partnered up with the Ugandan Water Project. Just think about that swap for a second. From a sprawling theme park to a developing nation. That is a profound pivot. And this wasn't some luxury vacation either. On the ground in Uganda, his boys met their peers. Kids their exact same age, whose entire daily lives revolved around basic survival. We're talking about children who spent hours every single day just fetching water. The contrast between their cushy Austin bubble and the harsh reality in Uganda was sharp, and it was immediate. This is exactly where the magic of a lived experience really starts to take hold. And then the breakthrough happened. One of his boys looked at the whole situation and asked this massive question. "Dad, how much money does it actually cost to build a well here?" Boom, right there. That exact moment was the catalyst. It instantly shifted his kids from being potential wealth destroyers right into future wealth multipliers. They stopped looking at money as just a tool to buy stuff and actually started looking at it as a tool to solve complex problems.
Section 3. 4 Mindsets for Multipliers, the Repeatable Framework.
So Nelson took this successful breakthrough and reverse engineered it into 4 specific, repeatable mindsets. First up is global perspective. You absolutely have to expand your children's horizons way beyond their local zip code. If kids only ever see their own neighborhood, their understanding of the world, and honestly, of opportunity itself, is severely limited. Bursting that privilege bubble is the essential first step. Number 2 is impact investing. We really need to stop teaching kids to just passively donate to charity. Instead, this framework suggests framing giving as a real investment, one that demands actual measurable outcomes. When a child asks what it costs to build a well, they are thinking like an investor, measuring the real-world return on capital, and that completely changes how they view philanthropy. Third is problem solving. The ultimate goal here is shifting kids from being passive consumers into active creators. When you expose them to massive global challenges and then empower them to imagine creative solutions, you're fundamentally training their brains to build, to fix, and to innovate. You are training them to be creators. Finally, we have intentional legacy building. This redefines what generational wealth actually means. It is not about just handing over a giant pile of cash. Real generational wealth means passing down the wisdom, the character, and the perspective to use those assets for good. Because if you just pass down the money without the wisdom, well, you become part of that 90% failure statistic we talked about earlier.
Section 4. Building your family legacy. Application in the real world.
Now, it's one thing to understand these mindsets, right? But making them actionable requires a very specific approach. The wrong way to do this is through dry, forced lectures around the dinner table. It just doesn't work. The right way is through lived experiences. Your kids actually have to live the experience for the lesson to stick. And hey, here's a pretty sweet bonus for the planners out there. Immersive service trips done through registered charities can actually be fully tax deductible. Definitely a win-win.
Now I know what you might be thinking right now. Do I need to book flights to Uganda tomorrow to burst this privilege bubble? No, absolutely not. You can start this exact same process right in your own backyard. Local alternatives are incredibly powerful. You can take your kids to food banks, local shelters, or community rebuilding projects. The location isn't the magic ingredient here. The exposure is what matters.
And that leads us to the real secret behind all of this: consistent exposure to different realities and watching complex problems get solved in real time. Look, the goal of this exercise isn't to make your kids feel guilty about their privilege. Not at all. The goal is showing them the tremendous opportunity brings an absolutely incredible potential for impact. You want them looking around and asking, what local problems do I notice, and what creative solutions can I imagine?
Ultimately, we are talking about raising future leaders, not kids who are afraid of wealth or kids who feel entitled to it. By shifting their perspective, you give them the absolute greatest inheritance possible, and that is purpose. So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. How will your family use its wealth today?